Thank you very much. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes,
can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you.
I hear you.
Thank you very much. Ambassador, you are much welcome. And happy birthday once again. My first question has to do with your childhood. You grew up in a home of living legend. Papa did not belong only to you, but to everybody. And I was wondering, what was your childhood like? Was it normal? How did you relate? And so my question to you, Your Excellency, is what are your fondest memories of your father and your mother? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Can you hear me? Yes,
I
yes.
can hear you now.
Yes. What was my childhood like? That's where I want to start. My childhood was as normal as you could get, in spite of the fact that Papa was Premier, leader of government business to start with. We actually didn't know that we were any different from all the other children in the neighborhood. We went to their homes, they came to ours, we went to the same schools, we played in the neighborhood. I went to play in the house of the laundryman. We called him the washerman at that time. He came in to wash their clothes, but he lived nearby. And I remember I used to go to his house. I would eat there. His wife was a fantastic cook. and I would eat there, and it was all very normal. We went to school by car if a car was available to take us and bring us home, but if no car was available, we walked. And there were no soldiers, no SSS, nobody. All Papa had was one policeman who resumed for duty just before he left for office, for the office in the morning, and would go to back to his home when they returned. So, and there was nothing special about us at all. At least I didn't feel it. They deliberately created an atmosphere that was as normal as possible. And so, but we also knew that Papa was a very busy man. There were always consultations in the house. His ministers would come in. He had a kitchen cabinet. Few people that were always there: Chief Rotimi Williams, Chief Anthony Nauru, Mr. Iwani, the usual suspects. They were always around, talking and planning. And he didn't have very much time to spend with us. So my fondest memories of that period of my life was the few times that he would take out to spend with us. And they were very, very few, I have to tell you. And they came around usually during holidays and Christmas, New Year, festivals. And whenever we came with him to Ikenne, we always came to Ikenne for his retreat. And we used to come with him and he would talk to us. And as we grew older, those sessions became even more meaningful. He would sit with us and just philosophize, he would just tell us about life. And I just wish he had lived a little longer, because the questions came after he had left. The questions that I wish I could have asked him. Yeah. They came, the understanding only came after he had gone. Yeah. I remember one session in Ikenne, in his house in Ikenne. He sat with us in the living room, in the sitting room. And he just, out of the blue, he just said to us, he said, you do realize that my name has taken a life of its own, that none of you can destroy that name any longer. He said to us, he said, that name will work for you if you use it right. It will work for you. It will open doors for you. But what you do with it, with your access, is up to you. He said, if you use it well, it will continue to work for you. But if you try to use it wrongly, you're on your own. Those were his words.
Mm-hmm.
He said, because my name is already there. It has a life of its own. That will remain with me forever. And that was very deep. And he said a lot of other things on that day. And I wish we could have continued those kinds of sessions. And as for Mama, well, she was the one that spoilt us. When Papa was not around, she would allow us to do things that Papa probably wouldn't have allowed us to do. And she was the soft one.
Yeah.
I have very fond memories of, I remember when I was in medical school and I was to move into clinical studies. Clinicals involved going around hospitals, sometimes far-flung, where you couldn't get buses to go there. And in any case, you'd have to go at all hours. So I needed a car. And so I told Papa and Mama that I needed a car to move into the next next level of my medical studies. And immediately Papa said no. Immediately he said no. And Mama just didn't say anything, but behind his back, Mama arranged for me to buy a brand new car in the UK, mind you. And that was how I got through that. But when Papa now came to visit me, he came on a visit, I think in 1971 or so. And I went to pick him up at this railway station in my car. He got into the car and said, well, is this the car that you said you wanted? I said, yes. So he just smiled. He knew what had happened. He had been arranged by Mama. And that was fun.
Thank you very much. I will take off from where Papa told you that his name had taken a life of his own. And that leads me to my second question. What is the legacy that you think your father left for Nigeria? A lot of the time, the name has been used as a leverage for so many things by so many people. And in what ways is Nigeria upholding the legacy or not? What is the legacy you think Papa left for Nigeria? And in what ways is Nigeria upholding the legacy or not? Thank you, Your Excellency.
His legacy is multidimensional. First of all, his legacy as a leader. He left an example that to be a leader, you need to prepare. You need to have the passion. You need to have the fierce commitment to the people. And you need to be prepared yourself. You need to go into it with a mindset that wants to work for the people, no matter the sacrifice you are called upon to make. He prepared himself from a very young age. For example, he became a Federalist from the age of 24. And when he was earning £1 a month, he always made some of it, kept it so that he could buy newspapers and journals, and generally prepare himself. And at some point, he realized that he needed to have a profession, earn money for himself so that his family would be well taken care of whilst he went into politics. And so that in case his foray into politics didn't work out, he would have a fallback position. So it wouldn't be a do or die venture for him. So he left all of that, the kind of personality, the kind of persona that you need to be a leader. And you need to be somebody who has a vision for the people, for the betterment of society. And then when you get into office, if you're lucky enough to get into office, he left a legacy of service, service, unstinting service. And he served Nigeria until the day he died. He was always thinking about Nigeria, always thinking about the problems of Nigeria and the solutions to them. Even when he went on holidays, I remember when he went to Disney World with his grandchildren. Disney World, that's a place you go when you don't want to think, when you don't want to use your brain at all. You just go there to be entertained and just have fun all the time. But Papa got there and was looking at how did this place come about? It was a swamp. So how did they build it into this? Everything that went into building the Disney World, Papa was thinking about. I was thinking about how to replicate the ideas that he got from there in Nigeria. So he left a legacy of service, a legacy of nothing is too much to do for people who trust you enough to put you in high office. He left a legacy of sacrifice. He was, his legacy was forged, I always say, in the crucible of sacrifice and just giving. He gave and gave, and then he gave. But it wasn't something that was unrequited. The people to whom he gave appreciated him, and they appreciate him to this day. So, that's his legacy, really.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Papa was spent for this nation.
That's right.
And we appreciate that. Some of us who were very young then still remember, and we appreciate that. I will move on now to your role. You were a member of the Constituent Assembly between 1988 and 1989. Do you think the recommendations of the Assembly have served Nigeria well?
Well, first of all,
that's the first part of the question.
Okay.
And the second part is, what role do you think the Constitution and or the Constituent Assembly, the constitutional engineering should have in solving the myriad problems that Nigeria is facing nowadays?
Okay. The 1989 Constitution, I'm afraid, never saw the light of day. It just was never used because the transition program didn't materialize until much later. So that Constitution was never used. That pains me because I was part of it. What was it? There were a few unique features about that Constitution which have survived to this day. The Judicial Council, I think that was the baby of that particular Constitution, and that has survived to this day. I remember that I tried. I mounted a spirited campaign because I was in the committee 2 Committee 4, dealing with Chapter 2, Fundamental Objectives and Directive Principles of State Policy. I was actually the vice chairman. Professor Ango Abdullahi was the chairman. And I mounted a spirited campaign to make the provision of education to children justiciable. We tried our best. It didn't go through. The other exciting part of that exercise was the attempt to include Sharia in the Constitution. And that was the first time that attempt was made, I think. And it caused such an uproar that the government in the end had to pronounce it a no-go area. So that's what happened. As to what role a constitution should play or can play in the life of a nation, the Constitution is everything. It's absolutely everything. If the Constitution is not appropriate or suitable, the country will continue to move from one problem to another, one crisis to another. But as soon as a suitable constitution is found, is forged, then peace reigns. This is a well-known fact. And Chief Awolowo actually took the trouble to do research from continent to continent, from country to country. And he did it diligently. It's all in his book, Thoughts on the Nigerian Constitution, which was actually written while he was in prison in Calabar. And he set it out there, country to country. Anyone who wishes to look at it can see that where you have a multilingual, multicultural, multi-ethnic conglomeration of people, it is poison to introduce a unitary constitution. And so for me, the Constitution is absolutely everything. And a lot of people perhaps are not aware that the first time the federalism was introduced into the Constitution of Nigeria was the Richards Constitution, I think either in 1945 or so. And then in 1947, the Macpherson Constitution, the consultations began towards a general conference in 1950. And those consultations in the North, there was a Northern conference, an Eastern conference, a Western conference, and all of them, bar none, came up with the suggestion that federalism is best for Nigeria. It was unanimous. Mm-hmm. So when the general conference met in 1950, it was it came up with a federalist constitution. Although people like Chief Awolowo thought it didn't go far enough, but it was a federalist constitution, and that was how they continued until independence. So without a constitution that guarantees equity and justice and fairness, perception is everything.
Thank you.
Where people feel that they're being shut out or being denied their rights. In fact, the Chick Commission in 1954 recommended derivation as a principle of resource sharing. So, and that was what happened in the First Republic in the 50s. That was what happened in Nigeria. The regions were more or less independent. They had their own constitution. they were able to, they had control substantially over their resources, and were able to develop at their own pace. So for me, it's in fact, the Constitution is everything.
Thank you.
And we appear not to have gotten it right yet in Nigeria.
Thank you, Thank you, Your Excellency. So essentially, a responsive and a responsible constitution is the bedrock of nation building and the solution to our problems. I like that from you. My last question, I wish we had more time, but I have a time specified for this interaction. Many Nigerian politicians profess to identify themselves with Awolowo's philosophy, and they invoke his name to legitimize themselves, even going to the ridiculous level of wearing his style of cap and his glasses. Whether it fits them or not, that's a question. But the question is, what kind of politicians you grew up with, Baba Awolowo? What kind of politicians, what kind of politics, what kind of policies do you think Awolowo would endorse today if he were alive?
Chief Awolowo was fortunate to surround himself with people of like minds. Certainly when he set out to play politics, partisan politics fully. The kind of politicians that surrounded him and that he would endorse today would be those kinds of politicians who saw their mission as a mission to serve the people. They never thought of themselves. They never thought of what was in it for them. All they wanted, as a young child growing up in that house and just looking at them, they were always so happy to be talking about what next to do, what next to do for the people. I mean, for example, somebody was saying the other day that when they introduced free education, nobody asked them for free education. They didn't even know that they needed education at that time. But they thought that this is the way to go. We need to build our people, etc. And they did it. And so the kind of politics that they played is quite unique now in this place. They were selfless. They thought nothing of sacrificing their comforts and their pleasure. I saw a picture, one of the pictures in Papa's library, of him in a wooden canoe. It's a black and white picture. In a wooden canoe, and you could almost see the crocodiles in those swampy rivers. I mean, if that canoe had capsized, only God knows what would have happened. And some of his colleagues were in shorts, khaki shorts. And that's the kind of people they were. And even the rich ones amongst them, the financiers, they were not contractors. They were industrialists, traders, etc. They just did their own business, but they believed in what Chief Awolowo and his team of politicians were doing and wanted to do. So they thought nothing of providing the financing to make it possible. And of course, the traditional, it was a strategic alliance. That's the name I gave it. It was a strategic alliance with the leaders in religion, leaders of the community, traditional rulers, scholars, businessmen and the grassroots. It was a team. There was a fantastic synergy among them to make a better country. And so that's the kind of politics that he knew. And they made friends. They were friends as a result. It was a joyful time. And thank God they had successes. They recorded a lot of successes, perhaps because they did nothing but work for the people. So it was a good time, and that's his kind of politics. So people who wear his cap and wear his glasses now, well, it's good to reminisce. It's good to remind us of the way Papa used to look. That's a starting point. Now they need to build up on it and do what he did, or not do what he didn't do. And just make it a complete package. That would be fantastic.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Papa's life was a life of consummate service, giving without thinking of personal gains and returns. And that is part of why his legacy lives on and on and on. I want to thank you for this brief moment with you. I could remember as a very young girl at Mayflower Junior School, we will march down to celebrate Papa's birthday. We were always part of it. And so we have fond memories of Papa. And we are happy that you are here carrying the torch aloft. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It's been nice interacting with you.
Thank you so much.
I will hand you back to Professor Falola for the next segment.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chancellor. We've enjoyed this conversation. We are live streaming this on YouTube and Facebook, which a number of people prefer because they can be doing so in their car and other things. I've seen some nice faces, including a presidential candidate, Kingsley Moghalu. Welcome. Wish you all the best as you organize your political party. I've seen the distinguished scholar who wrote many books, Professor Tunde Adeniran, used to be Nigerian Minister of Education. I can see the Vice Chancellor of Fountain University. Can see Chudo Numa, the distinguished journalist, and some others that I will recognize in due course. It's my pleasure to move on to the next segment that will be anchored by His Excellency Ambassador Michel Delaine from the Netherlands, a country that I've visited so many times. I love The Hague. And one of my favorite stories is when Lambo, the late Lambo, was heading the International Court of Justice. I just said, look, I walk into his office. I said, I want to see His Excellency. They said, it's there. And I just went straight to him. And from 10 minutes, it became 30. From 30, it became 1 hour. And we struck a relationship that endured until he passed on. His ambassador is the current deputy head of mission in South Sudan. He holds both a bachelor's and a master's degree in legal education. He went to the University of Maastricht. I've been there. Then he went to UK. He studied in Spain, in Nairobi, Kenya. Joined the Dutch military. His area of specialization is international trade law, human rights, democratization, good governance. And he's contributed a lot to discussions on strategies and peace. He's represented the Dutch government in WTO, in ECOWAS, European Union, the World Bank.
That's one generator online, I said.
And it's served in various countries, representing the Netherlands in Nigeria, in Libya, and other places. But he spent more time in Nigeria than elsewhere. He will be focusing his questions in the area of foreign policy, international relations, globalization. Welcome, Your Excellency, and we are very grateful for your participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. It's a great honor to participate in the program. Dr. Awolowo, I would like to join others also in congratulating you again on your birthday. Yes, I was fascinated by the way in which the discussion also went in the previous block about the Constitution. You can imagine that with my legal background, I always find it fascinating to see how countries shape their constitution. It's also actually an issue in the country where I'm now, and I know in Nigeria that has also always been an issue. Yes, when Her Excellency became ambassador to the Netherlands, that coincided with my first tour as a junior diplomat at the Dutch embassy then in Lagos. And I remember very well how that was also sort of a reset for the bilateral relations between the Netherlands and Nigeria. Because you can imagine under the previous military dictatorship, the relations had gone really sour, and then it was up to President Obasanjo to revive not just the relations with the Netherlands, but the relations with the whole international community. And I think for the Netherlands, he did a great job by appointing Her Excellency, because she was actually an excellent ambassador in The Hague and well known to everybody. And I think a lot of things were achieved at the time. So I have a few questions prepared. And my first question is actually about the challenges, Your Excellency, that you encountered in your career as ambassador, and how could Nigerians learn from those challenges that you encountered? I've also seen, of course, everybody has seen that recently Dr. Tokunbo Awolowo was appointed, or is going to be appointed, as head of the WTO. That is another great Nigerian diplomatic success. So would you have any advice for her in relation to the challenges that you encountered yourself?
Thank you. Let me first of all say, for the first time, a very public thank you to the Dutch government and to Her Majesty at the time, the Queen, to whom I presented my credentials. My first encounter with the Dutch establishment was that event, the presentation of my credentials. And I noticed two things. The first thing was that the Queen's Chamberlain that came to accompany me to the palace was an internal medicine professor. To me, he wasn't the only Chamberlain. That was a deliberate choice to make me feel at home, because they knew I was a medic. And so I thought, well, a government that could, go to these lengths to make me feel welcome, I'm going to work very closely with them. The second thing on that day was that there were two mounted police officers that led the procession. By the way, that was my first time riding um, a horse-drawn carriage. That was quite an experience. There were two mounted police officers. They led the procession, and both of them were women. Again, to me, that was a deliberate choice. And throughout my stay in the Netherlands, I enjoyed a great deal of cooperation from the Dutch officials and Dutch businessmen and everybody that I encountered, and even the civil society. It was a wonderful experience. Having said that, the challenges I faced immediately I arrived at post. Remember, I am not a trained diplomat. I had never been a diplomat in my life. I was thrown in at the deep end. But when I got to Holland, I realized the depth to which the reputation of Nigeria and Nigerians had sunk. So my first challenge was how to revive that, how to bring Nigeria back into reckoning. And I decided to do a few things. The first thing that I did was to ask the leadership of the Netherlands African Business Council to invite the executive chairman of the Nigerian Investment Promotion Council. At that time, it was Chief Kola Daisy. And happily, they assented to that. And Chief Daisy was invited to address their members. And that was the first breakthrough. That was a fantastic thing. And then I kind of followed up with visits to the businesses that that did business with Nigeria, you know. And I was always warmly welcomed and all of that. And then I decided that year was our 40th anniversary as a nation. And I decided to use that opportunity to showcase Nigeria in a more positive light. And talking about that, that was when I invited Professor Falola to be a part of that event. He was invited to deliver a lecture on the Nigerian culture. So, and that was a week-long series of events. And it was sponsored majorly by companies in the Netherlands that did business with Nigeria. And over the course of that first year, I was able to make inroads into the business world. And we were able to get a business delegation to Nigeria and one from Nigeria to the Netherlands, etc. And as the years went on, we had high profile visits from the Netherlands to Nigeria and the other way too. Climaxing in the visit of the president that was the first time a Nigerian head of state visited the Netherlands. So it all went very well. But the other side of the challenge that I had was from the Nigerian community there. And that was, you know, those were challenges of consular problems, consular issues, you know, these passports, etc., and residency and all of that. That was a real challenge, but you know, I'm glad we kind of sorted it out in the end. Talking about Mrs. Okonjo-Iweala, I don't know that I can advise her because she has an incredible track record on the international scene. That first year, my first year in the Netherlands, the president sent one of his officials to come to the Netherlands for a bilateral discussion on Nigeria, the bilateral debt, the debts Nigeria owed the Netherlands. And he needed to talk to the Minister of Finance. And as you know, Mr. Dalen, Ambassador Dalen, you don't see the ministers just like that. You needed months of months of notice to get an appointment in the Netherlands to see a minister. But here I was, the official was already in Holland. He was there, and he couldn't go back without seeing the minister. So I had a problem. And but then he said that there was a lady who happened to be also within the Ministry of Finance in charge of overseas development assistance. I can't remember her name now. She was a lady. She was, maybe you remember her. And that lady was a colleague of Dr. Okonjo Iweala when they both worked at the World Bank. So we put a call through to Dr. Okonjo Iweala, and she put a call through to her friend, and that was how the official got an appointment to see the minister in less than 24 hours. So that is the sum total of Dr. Okonjo Iweala. That is her reach and her influence and on the international scene. So she doesn't need advice from someone like me. She's totally competent. And I have no doubt that she's going to give a very good account of herself. Plus, she attended the same secondary school as me. She's an alumna of St. Anne's School in Ibadan. So I have no doubt that she's going
That explains a lot. Thank you very much for that answer. And in the end, it worked out because the debt between Nigeria and the Netherlands was cancelled, or most of it was cancelled at the time. And for some statistic reason, in that specific year, Nigeria became the biggest recipient of Dutch development cooperation in the world, but that was basically because the debt was rescheduled. Indeed. I have another question about development in Nigeria and in other countries. Of course, each country has its own trajectory of development and its own history and background and reason why things happen and other things might not happen. But as a diplomat with international experience, what do you think the Nigerian government can learn from other countries in the way of development? Looking at you already mentioned education, health, industry, and so on. Is there a way in which what the trajectory that other countries have gone through can be useful for Nigeria's development?
Absolutely. I'll start. I mean, comparing us with developed countries in Europe, America. Well, we can do that. But let's start with countries like South Korea, Singapore, Malaysia. South Korea, we started in 1961, we were way ahead of South Korea in terms of GDP. But within a few years, they streaked past us, not only to do well in terms of GDP, but they were admitted as the second Asian country into the OECD. How did they do it? We hear from Mr. Lee Kuan Yew how they did it in Singapore. That they were and from Mr. Kishore, I forget his second name, they simply pulled their socks off, were determined to develop their country. There was a consensus that, yes, everybody agreed that they wanted their country to develop. And they just hunkered down and went for merit. They were pragmatic, and they shunned corruption. In the case of South, and in all those cases, they were single-minded about the development of their people. Education, I mean, in South Korea, they threw everything at education, absolutely everything. And they worked in a coordinated fashion with all sectors, industry, the educational establishments, etc. It was a single-minded pursuit of the good of their country. So there is no other way around it. It's hard work, it's a lot of sacrifice, and it's a lot of determination, a vision that you will not let go of. So that's it. Leaders that emerge in both cases in South Korea, the leader that drove this, they were completely taken by the vision of a developed South Korea. And today we can all testify to what the country has become. And countries like Singapore and Malaysia. And if they could do it, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do it. So what I'm saying is that it's a combination of the right kind of leadership that is totally, totally committed to their country. I mean, in countries like that, anything less is frowned upon. It's just not accepted. It's not acceptable behavior. So, so that is the lesson, very simply, that you get leaders that are completely committed to the country and to its people, and all the rest of it is they're just details.
Thank you very much. Yes, I would very much tend to agree with you, because apart from that, as you said, there's no reason why Nigeria, let's not forget, Nigeria is the biggest economy on the African continent. Sometimes some people have a tendency to forget that. Why Nigeria should not have that position, if it wouldn't be for a certain number of things that have to fall in place. I've already reached my final question, and that is about the success of Nigerians abroad. As we know, Nigerians are probably the world's most successful persons when they are outside of Nigeria. They're brilliant, they're great in all ways of life, from artists to medical doctors to engineers to lawyers. But outside of the Nigerian context, and that of course also results in a certain type of brain drain when lots of people want to leave Nigeria to look for greener pastures elsewhere. How do you see that, and how do you think that it would be possible to keep educated and skilled people in Nigeria, or in Africa for that matter?
The simple answer is to give them the opportunity to. Once they can see that they have the opportunities to make use of their skills and their talents and their knowledge in Nigeria, of course they will stay. If the environment is conducive for them to stay, of course they will stay. See, the difference with all those other countries, that again is that the leaders are completely devoted to the good of their country, and they would make use of anyone, doesn't matter who has the skills, the excellence that they're looking for. And that is why Nigerians thrive so well in those countries, because they come to those countries with skills and with talents that we fail to recognize and utilize here. But when they get to other countries and they come to the notice of the people who run those countries, they're actually made use of. It doesn't matter that they're Nigerians or they're Black or whatever. As long as they can deliver, they're made use of. The simple answer is that the only way to stem brain drain is to make it more attractive for Nigerians to stay at home. Unfortunately, that is not yet the case. And it's very difficult to convince people who have opportunities abroad not to go, particularly these days when you can actually migrate legally and officially. You know, Canada is always looking for migrants. Even the UK, you know, most of those countries are always advertising for, you know, doctors, nurses, etc. And so, unfortunately, for Nigeria, we can't compete. So, what we need to do is to make the country competitive, make it easier for people to live here, so not only to exist here, but to thrive here. That's the simple answer. There's no other way.
Thank you very much. No, I agree. And of course, that also puts a job in front of the government to make sure that the atmosphere is more conducive than it is now. Well, I would like to thank you very much for answering my questions. It's a great honor to participate. And then I would like to hand the floor back to our moderator.
Thank you. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Dylan. If you come back to Nigeria, we're going to make you a chief. Atikene.
Why not? That can be arranged.
We're extremely grateful. She mentioned St. Anne and Okonjo Iweala. We also have a classmate here who is part of this audience, Professor Pamela Smith. They were classmates in that school. Maybe she will ask questions later, I don't know. We also have, I can't thank Gretchen Bauer enough, one of the most prominent figures in African studies. She's been attending this series. I think she's leading the panels committee for this year. I saw Michael Vickers, who wrote on Awolowo and the First Republic. Da Silva, who is fond of Awolowo, talking about him all the time. My good friend, Jide Raji, a psychiatrist at the Yaba College. Ibi Asensor worked with Daily Times. He's a Ghanaian. I saw him. He's fond of, he's read Awolowo's book and he's fond of making some Ijebu jokes. Thank you very much for coming. If I don't mention your name, don't be angry. I'm just recognizing a few people. I saw the architect I showed you from the University of Minnesota. Thank you, Tiona Nduka from Carleton University. I can recognize you. The editor of Premium Times, Olola Debankole. Thank you all. If I don't mention your name, don't be very angry at me. Well, now comes the big masquerade. I don't have to introduce him. He's an Ibadan man. Chief John Nwondo, the president of Anansi. He just ended his term. That is arguably the most prestigious position in southeastern Nigeria. Sometimes people will say this position is far higher than that of the governor. And he's been a political actor. He's older than me by a few months, but I've been wondering, how was he able to be so successful from his 20s? And I'm not. Well, that's not for this interview. It's going to be another interview. He's a lawyer. He's an economist. He trained at Ibadan. And then he went to the London School of Economics and Political Science. And he used those training very well to serve as a public servant, serving under the Second Republic, the administration of Shagari administration. And he later joined the transitional government of Abubakar as the Minister of Information. And lately, as I said, the President General of the most important cultural and political group of the Onase Indibo. I hope I've done justice in a few minutes that I have to introduce this Iroko. Big Masquerade is your turn, and we'll be covering the areas of domestic politics, Nigerian politics, and some other things that drives his own passion. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Professor Falolas. I'm very grateful to you for your lavish introduction. Dr. Tokunbo Awolowo, happy birthday. I'm so delighted to be one of those engaging you on this important day of your life. First of all, Nigeria, Dr. Dosumu, is a multilingual, multicultural, and multi-ethnic society, perhaps the most diverse in the world in terms of its differences. Not to talk about the large expanse of land which its inhabitants occupy. This has provoked a lot of ethnic conflicts, misgivings, suspicions, and insecurity. How do you think we can resolve these ethnic differences that crop up now and again so that Nigerians can live anywhere in the country without fear of discrimination?
Well, I think we need to look at the basis for these suspicions between ethnic nationalities. I think a lot of it arose from the perception of, I use the word perception advisedly, perception that maybe a group is trying to lord it over another one, or maybe there is some form of injustice or inequity. I believe that is where it all started. Way back, people migrated from the south to the north and vice versa. And there are generations on both sides that have lived, generations of people who have gone from the south and have lived in the north for decades, and the same on the other side. I remember when I contested election in Lagos, a young man just presented himself to me and asked to be part of my campaign team. He was from Shagamu, but he was from the north. His forebears were from the north. And he said he would like to join me, especially when I went to campaign in the Hausa-dominated areas of Lagos State. What I want to bring out of that story is that young man spoke Remo. I can't speak Remo at all. But even those who can speak Remo would find it hard to match this young man's Remo. So if he didn't if he didn't dress like a northerner, I wore the Buban Shokoto or wore Agbada and opened his mouth and spoke, you would think that he was a Remo chap. So his grandparents had stayed in the South for so long, and that has been going on for decades and without any problem. But over time, what started as irritations have become anger. And anger has turned almost to, I don't want to use the word that it turns to. And so it's becoming more and more difficult. Those who had lived peacefully together over years have suddenly turned into adversaries. So I believe that a solution can be found in the structure of this country. That is where the solution can be found, in the structure. Because that structure, with a suitable structure, with a suitable federal structure, comes the powers for the people that run each federating unit, the powers to actually hold their territories and for their voices to be heard and their instructions to be obeyed. When free education was introduced in the Western region, there was no discrimination whatsoever about who was eligible to register for the scheme. All any child needed was proof of residency of his or her parents, and they were in. There was no further questions asked. So we can live in harmony as long as we feel confident that the people who hold the reins of authority in each area are allowed to hold those reins, and they're allowed to call the shots and do what they must, what they should. To be honest, the threats that face Nigerians today don't ask questions. What ethnic nationality you belong to. Poverty doesn't ask questions. Insecurity doesn't ask questions. And so, we're all faced with it together, and we all must solve these problems together.
Your Excellency, I hate to interrupt you, but growing up as a child, I saw a different Nigeria. In Enugu, where I grew up in, the mayor of Enugu was a man from Katsina called Umaru Altini. In your area, Dr. Azikiwe was able to win an election into the Lagos City Council and became a member of the Western Region House of Assembly. The Accountant General of Eastern Nigeria, we used to call him Papa Tokunbo, was a Yoruba man. I went to university in Ibadan, as Professor said, and I won election into the Students' Union presidency in a Yoruba-dominated university. Do you think we can ever get back to this kind of life, where we would not have mutual suspicions that will alter one's ambition or competence in a job simply because of where he comes from?
It's too soon to answer that question. You know what? You know, a historian said to me that history is like putting a coin next to your eye. That when you put a coin over your eye, you can't see anything through that eye. But as time goes on, if you move it back and back and back, a point comes when that coin becomes just a dot and you can see a wider vista. That is what history is like. Right now, the coin is still against our eyes. It's actually very difficult to answer, but I cannot rule out the idea that as time goes on, we will understand one another so much better that those things will happen. And in any case, what it's about is about perception, as I said. You know, how much of these amenities are coming my way? What am I benefiting from this union? You know, if we see that we're all mutually dependent and mutually assisting one another, then perhaps. But right now, there's too much of what is mine, and what is yours is mine, or at best negotiable.
Thank you. I'd like to move you into our security issues. Right now, we have herdsmen who carry very modern weapons, AK-47, explosives. They have clashes with farmers. A lot of people are killed every day. And there are kidnappings. And there are indications that there are migrants, Fulanis coming from outside the border, who are responsible for some of this kidnapping. And we've seen religious clerics negotiating with them up and down. State governments have virtually started local security groups to augment federal troops who are either accused of not having any fidelity for their function or nonchalant to some of these security challenges. This poses serious security issues for our country. Do you think there's a way out of this?
Yes, there is. There is. And I alluded to it earlier. It's very, very important. I mean, everything you just described is a threat to communities. And I believe, that's my belief, that the solution has to be local. You know, first of all, the governors have to be given, they have to be allowed to exercise the powers that they have under the Constitution. They're supposed to be the chief security officers of their states. So they need to be able to exercise those powers fully. In order to do that, they need to have control over security outfits in their areas of influence or governance. They need to have absolute control, actually. So state police is absolutely essential. But while we do that, because state police means that, you have people who know the area, people who know who is where, who is what, who is supposed to be there. When a stranger comes in, they know immediately, etc., etc. But more than that, you need to work with community security outfits. I have always said that if those community security outfits are allowed to work as they should, it's important that, for example, Amotekun in the Southwest, I just use that as an example. In recruiting personnel for Amotekun, I thought it would have been more useful to work with either the security or outfits that exist already, or work through the traditional rulers, who can then identify young men in their domains who more than who know the land, actually probably knows who owns the land, probably belong to the families that own the land, all those forests. That there's no land that doesn't belong to somebody in these parts. So these young men belong to families that own those lands. So first of all, they have a vested interest to clear their lands and make them safe for the rest of their family to farm. And then they will be given stipends, or they'll be paid to do the job. I think under those circumstances, within a month, we'll have a solution. I use the area that I live in as an example. I know that they know everybody, every family that owns every square inch of land here. And there's not a single one of those families that cannot nominate a few young men into the security outfit. And once they can be let loose into those forests, they'll clear the place, I believe. But that can be done immediately. But ultimately, as we talk about federalism and a true federal structure, state police, in the meantime, also has to be put in place. That will do a lot to go a long way. It's unfortunate that I talk about perception again, that the impression is given that there are sacred cows, no pun intended, that cannot be touched. That's unfortunate. That's just so unhelpful. And I just think that the people in authority at the center should be more forceful, come out and be more forceful about what should be done about people who threaten the peace in different parts of this country, and give a riot act to the security agencies about what the government expects of them, and throw the book at whoever doesn't deliver. Once people are confident that the government is at their back, a lot of the anger and a lot of the frustrations will be ameliorated.
Tokunbo, I hate to interrupt you, but look, I believe that in a political process, public opinion is so important for policy development. The politicians are elected by the public, and the majority view of the public must necessarily influence the formation of government policies. Now, most Nigerians are extremely angry at the state of security in our country today. They are very angry at the domination of the National Security Council by a section of the country. They are very angry about the attitude of government to different security issues in the rest of the country. When it is happening with Amoteko in the West, on those states, they are prepared to go with troops there and deal decisively with the natives rather than with the invaders. When it is happening in the Southeast with IPOB, they are prepared to bring armored vehicles, are prepared to bring in planes and strap the whole place. When it's happening with these infiltrators from our neighboring countries in the North, they are prepared to send a religious cleric to go and negotiate with them and even offer them money. When it's happening with Boko Haram, the war can last for 5 years, for 8 years, it doesn't matter. And some of them are given amnesty and brought back and reabsorbed into our services. This kind of insensitivity to public opinion, a broad majority of Nigerians, including Northerners, detest this duplicity. And it appears that under a democratic government, Nigerians are not seeing the sensitivity of government to public wish. Democracy is government of the people, by the people, for the people. Is this really representative of democracy?
No, it's most unfortunate. It's most unfortunate. There are voices of moderation from all over the country. But as you said, there's a lot of anger. And the voices that call for conflict and violence are beginning to drown out the voices that call for caution. It's actually a bit, it's very difficult right now to speak up on the side of caution because people are very angry. They face these threats on a daily basis, and it's difficult to blame them. And that is why, I mean, you know, the Sultan the other day admitted that 70 to 80% of bandits that are arrested are of a certain stock. And a few voices like that all over the country are saying something needs to be done. Now, it's one thing for people to say those things, it's another for the people that are being spoken to do something about it. What I know is that given the level of anger that is going on in this country right now, if nothing tangible is done very quickly to douse the tension, and it has to be multi-tracked. You know, whilst you're talking, with having conferences and talking, strategies must be put in place at the same time to give confidence to people at the grassroots that, yes, we're thinking about you. Yes, we are considering your plight, and we are prepared to do something about it. But to continue to be silent about it would be very dangerous.
Dr. Dosumu, look, if your father of blessed memory were alive,
Yeah.
wouldn't he at this point in our history be part of a national movement that is calling for sanity?
Yeah.
Courageously
He
telling
would.
the government something
Absolutely.
ought to be done now.
Absolutely.
And I would like you to think of what you would do as a very seasoned diplomat, politician, who has been groomed up in your father's traditions, to see that we can come together and address the issues and remove the sentiment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm trying to be diplomatic about this. I'm trying not to, you know, when Papa was alive, and there was an interview before the 1983 elections. They were talking about rigging elections and the violence, pre-election violence. And Papa's reply was, violence doesn't solve anything. At the end of it all, you lose sight of what caused it in the first place. And then, the anger and the hatred just lingers after the violence is over and all of that. And that for democracy, violence doesn't actually fit in with democracy. But, he went on, we cannot sit idle whilst our people are being killed and are being violated, that nobody is going to sit idle, that if you continue to meet violence to our people, they're at liberty to defend themselves. That's what Papa said. So that's what he would say right now. He would call for caution. And that is what I'm saying. Call for caution, call for the voices that are still talking about caution, preaching caution, and allow that to be the conversation, the narrative that is that holds sway. And then do things at the same time. It's not just talking. Be seen to do things, to put things in place that will give confidence to the people, because people are hurting. They're hurting on a daily basis, and it's really quite gory. Some of the pictures you see, some of the stories you hear. It's not pleasant at all. It's far from it. And therefore, everybody in authority owes it a duty to Nigerians to be seen, to do something to stem this horrible tide. Otherwise, people will be left with no other option than to defend themselves. And that will be messy. That will be very, very messy, because you now get pockets, Somalia loading. You get pockets of warlords, and that nobody will be safe in that kind of situation. What we are calling for right now is leadership at this time. Leadership that can be seen, that can be heard, that can be seen to be doing something. I watch films a lot. I watch, and I like light-hearted films. There's this film called The American President. And one of the scenes in that film, there's a dialogue where one of the, senior aides of the president was asking him, challenging the president. And the chief of staff was saying, well, keep quiet. The president doesn't answer to you. And he said, yes, he does. Yes, he does. I'm a citizen. And in this place, it is not only allowed for me to challenge the president, it is my duty. It is my responsibility to do that. And he said, Mr. President, people are looking for leaders. They're looking for a leader. They want a leader. And that is what they want. And they are prepared to go through the desert, to crawl through the desert to a mirage in search of a leader. And when they get to that mirage and find that there's no water, they're prepared to drink the sand. And the president answered and said, people don't drink the sand because they are thirsty. They drink the sand because they don't know the difference. I leave you to make of that story, whatever it says to you. I know what it says to me. And I just leave you to make up your mind. So we're looking for leadership now. We're actually, and I hope that the leadership doesn't think that the followership doesn't know the difference.
Some people have opted for a constitutional solution. Governors Fayemi and Governor El Rufai have asked for state police. El Rufai and his APC committee have asked for restructuring of some sorts. The Southern and Middle Belt Leadership Forum has asked for total restructuring, devolution of powers to the states in such a manner that local security and the judiciary exercise exclusive powers in the states for matters that are state responsibilities. So that for traditional land disputes, civil and criminal offenses in the states do not necessarily have to go to appeal to Abuja. Do you think federalism can work in Nigeria? We've copied the American presidential system without copying the American devolution of powers. Do you think it can work? We've had many constitutional conferences, some of which you've taken part in, and some of the reports have not even been implemented. It was on the manifesto of this government, but it is not addressed. Is it possible to use constitutional review as a solution to these myriad of problems? And will federalism, under the circumstance, be the answer to the problem?
Chief, federalism is our only hope. It is our only hope. Anything else will just be going from one crisis to another. What Papa described as permanent instability and chaos. That is what we seem to be doing right now. Federalism is our only hope. It is our only hope. Because until you allow people to determine their own fate, to hang on to their own resources and do with it what they like. And there's no part of this country right now that doesn't have resources. The country is rich in resources from north to south, from east to west. The country is rich in resources, and we all have different ideas about how we want to be governed, what our aspirations are. Do we even have a consensus in this country about those things? Do we have a consensus about how we want to develop? Some people may want human development, and I hope everybody does. But do we have to actually have a consensus on these matters? And so, we continue to irritate one another. And this has continued and to the level that it is right now, which is intolerable to everybody. So I think restructuring is the first thing that needs to be done. I don't think, like some other people think that it's a major issue that you have to go through hoops and jump through hurdles.
So that I don't get into professor's trap, I think I'm exhausting some of my time. But if I were a journalist, I would have said that I got a scoop. Federalism is our only hope.
It's Tokunbo
Awolowo Dosumu. But last question. Are there things you think your late father, our revered Chief Awolowo, regretted or could have done better in his political and public life?
He was not a perfect human being. Nobody is perfect. But he was a very deliberate man. He never did anything without due consideration, without considering it very deeply and very seriously. I can't think of anything that he did that he should have done differently or done better. From my perspective, however, I probably wish he wasn't in politics. So that we could have had more time with him. With That's a selfish point of view. But actually, from his point of view, there's nothing that I can think of that he could have done differently, because at the end of the day, he was richly rewarded for his service to the people. He was. So,
Tokunbo, I can't end this without thanking you immensely. As one of the surviving children of your father, you have maintained a conduct, a courage, a comportment, a public persona that has continued to keep your father's name alive. And I congratulate you for this. And once more, happy birthday. It's my great pleasure to be part of this celebration.
Thank you very much, Chief. Thank you so much. I wish we could have talked about what it's like to be a the child of a.
I thought we would have been provoking jealousy, but now that you've raised it yourself, I'd like to know your own experience, because you and I share this kind of history. You're always hiding under the shadow of your father or the prejudices that people had against your father.
You remember you and your brother, we talked way into the night one day, long time ago, about the experiences. Yes. Well, Papa's memory is still so fresh. And there are so many people who want to stand upon his shoulder and stand upon his legacy, and whose ambition is to use that legacy as a springboard. And so it's hard.
They want to be Baba Kekere, as it were.
So there's a lot of competition for that platform, and people would they're kind of can be quite vicious about it. And I just came to the conclusion that if what I want is to continue to promote Papa's legacy, there are so many ways by which I can do it. And one of them is the foundation. Is take the essence of it out of partisan politics, where it really doesn't belong anymore. It belongs to the nation. It belongs to everybody, because it's a template that anyone who wants to do right by this country should embrace and use. Fortunately, he wrote a lot of books. He committed his thoughts to writing. So it's available, and we are quite willing to do the research, get the papers whenever they need it, so that it can continue. We want to protect it and project it, so that at some point in the future, maybe a generation will arise that will want to look back and revisit the legacy of Chief Awolowo, that there was a man that did certain things, and in his own time, a lot of successes were recorded. Let's go back there and use that template. That's what we're doing. So I wish anybody luck who wants to use the legacy to fight partisan politics. If it works for them, good, well, congratulations. But I have more. I'm quite happy.
Don't say you've left it. You never can tell. But thank you very much.
I think I have annoyed Chief Adebanjo by saying that. He doesn't want to hear me saying that I'm not in politics. He gets really annoyed.
I don't want to either, because you can't take me where you've never been to. And the greatest problem of our country is that people who grew up in this milieu and who saw how difficult problems were solved by interaction, intellectual interaction, conceding here and there. There are very few people who have that socialization process. And it's not something you can deprive your country of when you have it the way you have it, Tokunbo.
Thank you.
And I do hope that your no is not a constant no. Thank you anyway for having me.
Thank you very much.
Chief Awolowo, those were lovely questions. I cannot thank you enough. We're going to bring you back on this program, and one day we're going to interview you.
Wow.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Now I want to invite the young generation, Jordan Joel and Ajoke Bodunde, both of them living in London. The way they work is they do their meetings, they collect questions from their colleagues, and we do not get involved in what is of interest to them. We don't get involved. Please, is your turn. Thank you.
Once again, Your Excellency, we would like to thank you for being here with us. You have made a very significant political footprint in the public sphere, And women have been marginalized in Nigerian politics. For instance, there has only been one female governor, Dame Virginia Etiaba, who lasted 3 months in Anambra State. And we would like to know from you what you think, what barriers do women face when trying to participate in politics, particularly in light of the cultural role that society places on women?
Right, that's the question.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, so many challenges that women face. First of all, in a patriarchal society like ours, women are expected to be seen and not heard. It's not on for women to aspire to positions of leadership, although that is changing. That is changing faster in some parts than others, but it is changing. So that's the first hurdle. You're expected to get married, have children, look after your babies, and that's it. Be a wife in the house, which is fine. I mean, it's lovely. But if your spirit is one that aspires to greater achievement, then that can be very frustrating. And then when you decide to go into politics, the way politics is played in this country right now, you need a large sum of money to take part. In fact, even men, a lot of times, don't have the money themselves. They have to take from the influence and the money of some others so that's another constraint. The other constraint is that politics now is nothing short of war in Nigeria right now. Women aren't wired to do anything like that. Nothing. Women are not wired to fight and to play dirty. So if your desire, if your ambition is to serve your country and to serve your people, why should you go down into the pits to fight and fight dirty? So that's another constraint. And so women who actually dare all odds and step out anyway, they then face another challenge because they are maligned, they're given names, the reasons for their successes are suspect, because a woman is not expected to succeed in and by herself. So those challenges are very real. Unfortunately, also there's opposition from women sometimes as well. So you have so myriad of problems, but it can be done because a woman that decides that, right, this is my mission in life, this is what I want to do. If she's fortunate, she can get the support of her family. If she's married, her husband, and her biological family. If she's not married, from her parents and her siblings, to go out, to step out, and they will do everything they can to support her. it's not impossible for women to step out and be counted. But right now, women aren't doing very well in Nigeria at all. As usual, Nigeria appears to lead from the rear in all the statistics, in so many statistics globally, and this is not an exception. Nigeria has the lowest percentage of women representation in parliament and in government in Africa and perhaps the world. So that is a pity, but it's not likely that men are going to yield, because the way politics is played right now is, it's winner take all, and the prize is so enormous that people who actually go into it do their calculations, very, very well, and they're not ready to yield to anybody. So affirmative action, yes, it's there, but how well is it implemented? I'm not sure. Right now, or at least the last parliament, the percentage was only 7% of the parliament that were women, or something in that region. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
I can.
So the challenges are enormous for a woman, but they're not impossible to scale. It's just that you prepare yourself mentally, emotionally, psychologically, for a battle royal. And you have to have a very thick skin, and you have to be ready to join the fray in whatever theater the men decide that the battle is going to take place. So,
thank you very much for your answer. I will now hand over to Jordan to ask the second question.
Good evening, Ma, and thank you so much for being here. Just participating and researching before this, I've learned a lot, and from your conversation so far, I've learned a lot. And I just want to say happy birthday again.
Thank you.
On to the second question. So it appears that our current political landscape is bereft of political ideology.
I can hardly hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you better.
Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, it appears that our current political landscape is bereft of political ideology. It is arguable that Nigerian politicians are not nation builders, but party builders. They would rather prefer a novice to intelligent, competent, and passionate Nigerians. How do you think we have gotten here, and what do you think the future looks like?
Oh, how did we get to this point of no ideology?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
And what was the...
And what does the future look like?
Oh, right. Let me start from what the future looks like. I was one of the ones that had almost lost hope about the future, at least in terms of politics and governance, until recently. But the young people have shown that they have ideas of their own and are willing to step out and actualize those ideas. I think their experiences have been so tough, so dire, that they have developed a courage to say enough. So I have no doubt that the younger ones actually have a very clear idea of the kind of country they want to live in. And I'm sure as time goes on, they will develop strategies as to how to actualize those ideals and those ideas that they have. One thing that happened during the EndSARS protests that actually surprised me was that a group of young people climbed onto the statue of Chief Awolowo that is in Ikeja, in Alausa. And I saw videos on social media. They took pictures with the statue, and they were saying, Awolowo will come and rescue us. It's not even that was so surprising. What was most surprising is that those young people are so young that I'm sure their mothers were probably teenagers at best or younger when Chief Awolowo died. I'm not talking about when he was in government. So clearly, they have been able to find out and understand that this is somebody that did it right. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of looked at his template in the future. That I feel very surprised and rather pleasantly surprised about. Now, how did we get to a state of no ideology? Well, I'm not sure that ideology was the thing for Chief Awolowo. I think actually he was more a pragmatist, to be honest with you. When he was in government, he encouraged industry. He encouraged industry, he encouraged industrialization, he encouraged business. And at the same time, he put in place strategies to develop every human being: health, education, employment, infrastructure, and all the rest of it. So, whereas on one side, he was a welfarist, on the other hand, he also was very, very friendly to business. So I would rather that people are clear about the kind of Nigeria that they want, the kind of development that they want, how they want to achieve that development. We all know now that every human being is important. In fact, they are the building blocks for development in any country. The World Bank has told us that, and the United Nations too. So as long as they're willing to work for the benefit of every single individual in the country, and also create an enabling environment for people to live, work, do business, and thrive so that the economy can be vibrant, then right now we see too much of I, me, and myself on display. And I think that is the problem. Once we're able to get people who are ready to work for the good of others, I think we'll get there.
Thank you very much.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes, it does. And it was very helpful. Ajoke will ask the next question.
Your Excellency, the African diaspora is often referred to as the sixth African region, and you spent a significant amount of your life abroad in the UK and the Netherlands. Your father also went to law school in the UK. What role does the diaspora play in Nigerian politics?
What role does the diaspora play in Nigeria, first of all? They send a lot of money, the inflow of money from the diaspora is incredible. So they are they are our most important, most valuable offshore assets. So that is possible. So what role do they play in Nigerian politics? They lend their voices, at least right now, with the benefits of technology, they're able to participate in meetings, share ideas. Sometimes they're able to kind of lobby for on issues concerning Nigeria in their countries of domicile. And they have the kind of network and the kind of influence that can make things happen in Nigeria. They may be hampered by what happens in Nigeria, following through some of the contacts that they make, but they are there. I was at a Zoom meeting yesterday with somebody who lives in the US, and it was clear that he has the kind of reach that Nigeria would benefit from immensely where he is. But unfortunately, do those kind of people have a voice? Are they listened to? Are they allowed to, are their ideas allowed to flourish? I'm not so sure. So, they do, the potential is there, let's put it that way. The potential to make a phenomenal difference to the fortunes of Nigeria in terms of governance, in terms of business, in terms of the economy are there. Even right now, quite a number of Nigerians have been appointed into the new administration in the US. And in the UK, I have a relative's daughter who is on the cabinet. So I hope her dad is on this program. So, they're doing extremely well, as Ambassador Dalen said before. They are talented, they are high flyers. And if only they had the opportunity to actually have a voice and be listened to properly in this country, we would benefit a great deal more from them than just money.
Thank you.
All right, so this is the last question. Just want to thank you again for your time. Really, really appreciate it. So onto the foundation. So what contributions has the foundation made to the development of young Nigerians? And what are the core values of the foundation, and how can young Nigerians imbibe these values?
Okay. The foundation, as I said right at the beginning, is an advocacy organization. So we don't actually award scholarships or anything like that. We bring out ideas that young people can benefit from. One of our dialogues in the early years was devoted to the youth, Nigeria and the youth. And subsequently, we've had one or two special dialogues devoted to the Awo legacy and the youth. The reason for that is that we realize that the youth live in an environment that is rather different from, the political environment that is rather different from what Chief Awolowo lived through. And therefore, we needed to allow them a sneak peek into what the environment was like for when he held sway and therefore the kind of environment that they could create for themselves in order to do things properly. So we have constantly reminded the youth about Chief Awolowo and who he was, not in a form of gratuitous self-congratulations or self-aggrandizement, but in order to point them to the fact that things can be done differently and perhaps better. And I don't know, I mean, somehow those young people that I talked about in Ikeja have been able to remember Chief Awolowo somehow. I'm not saying that was because of the Awolowo Foundation, but we are always out there reminding people of Chief Awolowo, who he was and what he did. So, so that's the impact I hope we have had on young people. And we will continue to do that. We have a program called Our Conversations as well, where we bring a group of young people from different parts of the country to meet with people who are experts on the life and times of Chief Awolowo, to exchange ideas and to rub minds so that they can get a look in, an insight into who Awo was, what is Awoism, what did he stand for. So, so that's how we try to bring Chief Awolowo into the lives of young people. And what are the ideals of the Awolowo Foundation? Yes, I think I've said it all. You know, we want young people to imbibe integrity and selflessness in politics, and decent politics, ethics in politics. That's what ideals are.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I can say definitely, researching into this, it was great to know that we had a leader like Chief Obafemi Awolowo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last segment is questions and comments from the audience. I will follow the way in which we do it, which is take some questions that were preset to us and invite some members who are here. Let me start by calling on the presidential candidate, Kingsley Moghalu, if he wants to ask questions or make some comments. Please be quick, because we've already spent over 2 hours. Kingsley, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, it's a great pleasure and honor to be part of this conversation. And I thank God for your life and for your father's life and for your family and your impact in our country. My question is simply this. Awo, you know, was a representative of a certain brand of politics that had a lot of achievement, a lot of impact, but he never attained ultimately power at the center. Was that a disappointment?
Yes. I mean, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't for him. It was a disappointment. And he never could understand why his message was not heard, let alone understood. He saw so much. Now, looking back, I just wonder how frustrated he must have been, because he saw a lot of what we're seeing right now. He saw it ahead.
Yeah.
And he was, it's not like a silent scream and nobody could hear him. So yeah, it was a disappointment, but again, at the same time, he was satisfied that he had done absolutely everything that he could do to offer a solution to this country's woes. He died satisfied. He knew there was nothing more he could have done. And that's all he could ask of himself. And so, he was disappointed for Nigerians. I remember towards the end of his life, he said he had 3 prayers that, 3 requests that he placed in front of his God. 2 of them were personal. One of them was the problem of Nigeria. He said the other 2 had been answered, and that the 3rd one was not answered, but that was not his problem. Yeah. That was a corporate problem. So he was satisfied, totally satisfied that he had done everything he could. And, that was all he could do.
Yeah, thank you very much for answering that question. I just end with a comment, just to say how much I admire your late father also for an example I take from him, and that is the role of the home in anchoring a public leader. I admire very much his relationship with your late mother, and I think one could see very clearly the impact of that stability on the home front. Today in our country, unfortunately, we see a lot of great men and great women, but unfortunately, the home front tends to be, volatile, not stable, and so I just want to end with that comment, that this is one thing I also observed about him, which I have tried to emulate in terms of the role that one's spouse and one's family plays in the context of family in stabilizing a public figure. It's a great example. When I visited you in Ikene a couple of years ago, I was very thrilled at the tour you gave me of the tomb of Chief Awolowo and your mother. And that memory remains very fresh and very strong in my mind. God bless you. Happy birthday. And all the best. Much. Okay. Yeah.
Professor Tunde Adeniro, want to ask a question or make a short comment very quickly? You have to do please unmute him. Can you unmute him?
Yes.
Are you hearing me now?
He is unmuted. I can't hear.
Are you hearing me
now? Yes, sir, we can hear you, but unfortunately, your audio is very low.
I don't have a question. This country will still change. That this country lost a wonderful opportunity to have that of Awolowo. Each time we see some of these things happen, really happy that at least once the coming generation to be made familiar with what we lost, maybe the time will come when we will revisit and see the need to make use of that legacy. I only just wish to congratulate this
sir. Sir, sorry to interrupt you. Please, would it be possible to move your phone or your laptop closer to you so that it's easier to hear?
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Good now. You can hear me now.
A little better, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I'm happy with this type of event, and I do pray that God will enable this country to make use of that legacy, and for this country to benefit from the wonderful insight that He provided. I agree, absolutely, that the way forward for us in this country, for survival, stability, peace, and coming together, of course, is through federalism. It restructured Nigeria through a new constitution. And of course, I do not for once believe that we should allow things to go apart, simply because we have the intellect, and God in His mercy bless this country, not just with material, but with human material, that we should be able to manage our affairs and be at peace as brothers, sisters, and be able to make this Nigeria pride of Africa and of the Black race. Happy we had Papa Awolowo, and I'm happy today that the legacy lives on. This type of interview is very encouraging. I congratulate all those involved in organizing it, and I do pray that we will do more to justify the fact that we believe in the legacy of the stage. Thank you very much, and I hope that my brother Tony will send a private message to me as to people keep asking where can they find your book. That is something that I would love to also have, so I'll be able to give those people the information that they are asking for. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Adeniro, former Minister of Education. We are very grateful. I saw a king here, His Royal Majesty. Are you here? His Royal Majesties, I can't mention, tradition doesn't allow me to mention your name. Chief Laddie Williams, you want to quickly ask a question because our guest is tired. In 8 minutes, we have to let her go and rest. Chief Laddie Williams. Okay. I don't want to mention His Royal. Yes, sir.
Can you hear?
We can hear you, sir.
Okay, because I can see here. Hello?
We can hear you, sir.
Yeah, you want me to ask a question?
Or you can make a comment.
Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
well,
sir.
I was just going to, first of all, come by way of humor. Because what question do I ask somebody that I have known for 65 years? I think I should first of all ask her that question. Hello?
You can ask whatever you like.
Yes, okay. So what question can I ask somebody that I have known for 65 years? Because I doubt whether you know anybody else for that length of time at this point in time. So if you were in my shoes, what question will you ask? Given those
you
facts.
ask whatever you ask whatever you like.
Well, are you satisfied with the way that Nigeria has developed and is developing? And in all seriousness, do you think Nigeria can continue to exist in this form in the future? That's the first question I would like to ask.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Very well.
Lady, thank you for that question. You know my answer. You know how it was, the sacrifices that were made in those days in Ibadan. When your family moved to Ibadan and your dad was a cabinet minister, I remember the first house you lived in was inside Oja Okeado. Do you remember? Mm-hmm. So
very well.
it wasn't exactly. So it wasn't. There wasn't anything luxurious or anything about it. And you remember the story about the contractor that tried to go and give 50,000 pounds to the Minister of Works, who was then Chief Ogedengbe.
Yes.
He panicked when the contractor came with the money, went to the Attorney General, who was your dad, and they both panicked. 50,000 pounds. And they decided that the best course of action was to go to the Premier. So they went to the Premier and said, well, this is what this contractor did. And the Premier said, okay, we have to redraft the contract agreement and deduct. It means that the contractor has 50,000 pounds too much as his profit. So deduct the sum of 50,000 pounds from the contract sum and gets him to sign. And that was exactly what happened. So how can I relate that kind of system to what we have now? It's not possible. So, you know, am I happy? Well, yeah, I can't be, because what it means is that they all worked for nothing. But maybe not. I mean, some people still appreciate what they did. And yeah, so what was the second half of your question? And what you were talking about, federalism.
Yes, whether you are happy with the way Nigeria has turned out.
No.
And whether we continue in this manner.
Oh, whether Nigeria can continue. No, certainly not. This is not sustainable. We have to change the structure of Nigeria, and a lot of things need to change fundamentally. We have to sit around and agree. Okay, agree as to what kind of structure would be acceptable to everybody.
But
I doubt whether it will be exactly this structure, but
yes, let me pose another thing to you. Are we being fair to ourselves and to Nigeria as a nation in expecting us to remain the way we are? For example, when you look at the United Kingdom, the Scots are still agitating for a separate country, for Scotland as a nation. In Canada, I can assure you, I was there a year before the last. The French, speaking part of it, are not very happy with the fact that they have to remain in the Union. Again, well, I've only used the English-speaking countries because I believe their background is similar to ours. If these nations that have been together for, I don't know, for a very, very long time, centuries, are still talking about breaking away, why should we expect ourselves to continue to remain the way we are? Therefore, my own proposal, my own humble proposal, is not about restructuring. It's not what is going to solve our problem. what is going to solve our problem is for us to have nation. Certainly, federation has failed us. But I don't think that will be the answer. Sincerely, most of the people I've talked to simply say that they can
Okay. Shall I answer, as far as I heard? Okay. Well, actually, I disagree because what we've had hasn't been a federation. Actually, we've not had a federation, not
after 20.
Okay, can I answer now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yes.
We can hear you.
Okay. What we've had has not been a federation, and that is why we're missing it. Whether we want restructuring or whether we want separate states, we're still going to have to talk about it. It has to be by mutual agreement. Otherwise, it has to be by conflict. So if we're ready for conflict, I don't know enough about that to say that we're ready for conflict. But whichever way, I mean, the majority will have its way. So I just believe that we haven't given dialogue sufficient room. And people who think like me are getting fewer, I must admit, and our voices are getting drowned out. But I just believe that we have to be rather cautious and not be stampeded into conflict. Whether we want restructuring or whether we want to break away, I think we have to do it by agreeing together to go our separate ways. I mean, that would be, if we all agree, then that's no problem at all. So. I can't hear you, Professor Falola.
Can I give the last question to Shola Adeyeye? The last one, the last question. We've run out of time. Go ahead, sir, please.
Thank you very much. Actually, I have no question, but just to say that I'm grateful to all of you for organizing this program. Thanks to Tokes for doing a marvelous job. I'm in the great spirit, great soul of Papa Awolowo, rest in peace. We missed him. We had a chance to build a great nation through Obafemi Awolowo. We wasted that opportunity. By the time I die, my prayer is that my children will not live in this wastage throughout their life. The last 40 years of my life have been years of sorrow. God bless you all.
Amen. Thank you for being there.
Well, let me call on Professor Bola Oshibodu to thank the ambassador for us. And you can smuggle in a question, but your job is to thank her. Thank you very much.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Let me first of all pass my comment. It's actually not a question. I think Papa Awolowo came too early ahead of his peers. The problem at that time was that his peers did not really understand him. If he had come during this, our own generation, it would have been better. His case is similar to that of Barack Obama. If Barack Obama had come to America at the time Papa Awolowo came, nobody, he will have no chance of ever becoming the American president. That's exactly the way I have seen the era, because most of them did not understand him. For example, my own father was not a politician, but he would always tell us at home, he said that is, he wished he too could be speaking fluent English like Awolowo, you know. And my father was not a politician, so you can imagine his peers, his politicians, his fellow politicians did not really understand him. That was the problem. Well, on that note, I want to thank Tokunbo very well, and to also correct Ladi that he thought he was the one, the longest 65-year-old to have known Tokunbo. That is a joke. Pamela Smith, I remember her, I think she was Pamela Scott. Yes, I can see Esima Jesagate here too. Yes, we all grew up together in Ibadan, in the same neighborhood. So anyway, let me now thank you very much, Tokunbo. Let us have more of this dialogue. And I don't know how you are going to do it. If we can just integrate, since you are now in the area of education, you are trying to integrate the issue of drug problem into education, because a lot of our young ones are getting into drug and they are falling by the wayside. I thank you very much, and we look forward to such dialogue. Professor Falola, you have done very well, and all the speakers, thank you very much.
Well,
thank you very much, Bola.
Before you go, Diama, do you have energy for 2 minutes? Because people have been complaining to me via my WhatsApp. Wangu Keodujole said he wants to talk, otherwise you are not going. I don't know him. Okay, please. He said we must talk.
No, I don't mind. I don't mind at all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Actually, I was about to write you an email to complain that you're trying to stifle our voice. But thank you for correcting that. I really appreciate it. My name is Goke Odujole. I'm speaking from Minnesota. I nearly missed this. My 85-year-old mother quickly alerted me that the program had started. She's also listening on another device. I'm currently the president of the Egbo Moduduwa in Minnesota. And as you must know, Egbo Moduduwa was formed by Baba in 1952. Currently in Minnesota, there are at least 25,000 Nigerians. And we set up the legacies of Baba so that the spirit of Oboluabi can be in our children, those who are born here, and those who are brought at a very early age. I got a couple of questions for you. In 1987, when Baba died, I was a student at University of Lagos. I was actually at Ikene for the burial. I could remember those 3 days, how heavily it rained. The day before, the day of the burial, we were all soaked. I've read a lot about Baba. I currently met a doctor who was Baba's doctor at Mayo's Clinic in Rochester. He's a white guy, and probably was a young doctor then, and he really told me a lot about Baba. So Baba is somebody I've read about. I got a couple of questions for you, and number one will be this: if Papa will still be alive, will Papa still maintain the trajectory of what he fought all his life for the kind of Nigeria to which all the powers is concentrated at the center? Or do you think Papa will have changed his mind on where we are at the state of Nigeria? Secondly, don't you think it's too late to keep and patch up things the way they are now? Do you really think we have missed it? And I'm sure somebody said earlier on that their generations have missed it for the last 40 years. It's been a sad man. That's Senator Adeyeye. And I don't want my children to say the same thing. I'm feeling very bad about Nigeria. But if you have a son or a daughter who wants to contest and seek office at the center, the way Baba was trying to do all his life, what advice will you give that daughter of Fred? Kingsley had been to your house, is seeking to be the president of Nigeria. And so he might be the kind of person, what advice do you think you're gonna give to him? Some of the answers you gave, I see where you are leaning on the issue of restructuring, but a lot of us are frustrated with the way Nigeria are. And I think it might be better to review things and chart a new course for this country. Thank you very much.
Mr. Goke Odujole, would you allow me to check what you've just said as comments so that she doesn't answer them? But I can link the two of you together subsequently.
There were some things that, but
I can answer one. I can answer a few. I can answer.
You are not tired.
No, I'm good. I can't remember the first question, but I remember the second one. Do I not think the restructuring is too late for restructuring? I actually don't, because what my vision of restructuring is a truly federal constitution where each federating unit is more or less autonomous. And that's really what we want. There is no doubt that there is an advantage in Nigeria being, the size and the size of the economy and all of that. But more than all of that is the question of how do we actualize our disengagement from Nigeria? Because we can't just declare one day that we are gone. Then it would mean we are declaring war on Nigeria. If we're prepared for that, as I said, I don't have information in that direction. If we're prepared for that, if that is what people want, then that is, I abide by what the majority want. But what I think is that if we declare war, if we say we're going and we declare war and we're not ready, that would be disastrous. So I'm just trying to preach caution as a woman, and as Papa would never lead his people into any conflict in a precipitate manner. He would never do it. He loved the people he led so much, and he wanted them to keep their lives. So he never would lead them into disaster. So I'm just saying that if we want is to be able to control our destiny, a federal constitution, the three major things that helped Papa when he was in government in the Western region was, first of all, the constitution that they had was a federal constitution. He had powers to do everything that he did. And then he had the resources to do it. The commodity marketing boards used to be under the federal government. He and the NCNC, they collaborated and fought and got the commodities marketing board to be domiciled in the regions. And that is exactly what happened. Was that immediately they got 34 million pounds of accumulated resources. And then their allocation went from 6 million to 13 point something million. And that was how they were able to launch into everything that they did. So it is possible. That is why everybody that is interested in federalism have to collaborate. They have to work together and forge a majority. So that is what happens, but we have to talk about it. That is what was in place when Chief Awolowo was in government, and that is why it worked. They had their own constitution, they had their own agents general, their own ambassadors. They had their ambassador in the UK and so on. So you have all the benefits of an independent nation, but you then have, at that point, it wouldn't matter who is in Abuja. because all the things that have to do with your life and mine will be domiciled in our constituent, in our federating unit, and we will have greater access to our representatives. We have greater voice to call them to account. I mean, if we're left to our own devices around here, you know more than, you know, the Yoruba people, Amorawa, we know one another. We know who to choose, and nobody can dictate to us from Abuja who is going to be the candidate, or no considerations from the center as to who will be the candidate. Can't happen. So we would have all the benefits without having to go to war. That is all I'm saying. And I'm sure that's what Papa would advocate. That, I mean, if we're left with no option, Yorubas are not cowards and they are not fools. They know what to do, how to defend themselves. But I don't think we're at that point yet. We're still way from that. Let us call the voices of reason from all parts of Nigeria. Let's call them together and talk about this and decide where we want to go. If people continue to play games, then we will know. Yoruba people and most Nigerians are politically sagacious. They're more intelligent than we give them credit for. So that's all I'm saying as far as that is concerned. Have I answered your questions?
Yes, you have. Do you have energy for 15 more minutes?
I don't mind. I do have energy.
So A.B. Asensor from Ghana, he was a columnist with Daily Times working in Lagos.
Yeah.
Are you still there? He sent me so many notes. He wants to ask a question. Asensor, are you still there? He's left. Then Dr. Azan, are you still there? Dr. Azan.
Yes, I am, sir. Good evening, sir.
Go ahead. Be quick.
Yes, sir. Yes. On behalf of Yoruba Council of Youth Worldwide, the Yoruba Council of Women Worldwide, the Gimapa for Yoruba Lagbaye, we are indeed grateful to God for the additional life to Your Excellency. We are glad that you have been playing that motherly role as our Yaniwura. I'm saying this on the premise of your vision. For as much as I'm not asking a question, but just to give kudos and to comment that vigor in you, that our unity, the peace of this nation is still sacrosanct in your heart. But we still believe that document that will give us that home-based charter of demand, which you have rightly expressed, is highly needful now. We, on our own part, I double as the president of Nigerian Youth Coalition. We've been working on some legal documents in the recent times.
Can I just interrupt for a minute, Dotto?
Yes,
can I just interrupt? Unity is sacrosanct.
Yes,
as long as the structure is correct.
Definitely,
as long as the structure is right, okay?
Definitely.
It's not, I'm not one of those who say unity is non-negotiable. No.
Yes,
as long as the structure is right, as long as we are all agreed as to how the country is going to be. So carry on.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We understand that we have an opaque constitution presently, not immediately much. Is not really the kind of
can you
document.
Close your comment, please.
But be that as it may, our own appeal is that in view of that role that we need to really structure the state, we really need you, Ma, to lead that line of coordinating committee that will begin to implement the resolution of today, of tonight, so that 1 or 2, 3 persons that have shown cause to be on can continually look into that document that will fast track the kind of nation that we all deserve. Thank you very much, Ma, for the opportunity, Ma.
Thank you. Thank you, Dosu.
Thank you. Onuma should be our last person. Onuma has been sending me, he's been calling me. Please, ask the last question, please.
Okay, thank you.
We don't want to abuse our guest.
I know. Thank you.
She's an old lady.
Thank you. Happy birthday, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much.
Quickly, the question I want to ask, and I grew up in Lagos, I benefited from free education, and as part of my intellectual development was reading the works of Chief Obafemi Awolowo. Beyond his politics, let me not say not much is known, but in the general population and among young people now, I give books by Iwo. Thanks to COVID, I was able to reread this particular book. I just pulled it from my shelf now. I don't know, by far, Iwo was, in terms of understanding the problems of Nigeria, he was way beyond his time. What I want to know, perhaps from the point of view of your foundation, and some of these books are out of stock, is there any plan to ensure that these books are reprinted or maybe made easier for younger people so that they have the opportunity, to understand that beyond the politics and activism of the late Chief Obafemi Awolowo, there was really more the intellectual aspect of his life, which I think can help us in this particular period where the country is going through a lot. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, we still have some of his books. Some titles are out of stock, but the foundation does produce them, and those ones that are out of stock are in the process of production right now. The one you held up just now, I couldn't see it very well. Is it Travails of Democracy? Yes, Travails of Democracy. That was his last book. Yes, that I think is still in stock. We still have that. And quite a number, Awu and all those other ones are still in stock. But we do. I just want to reassure everybody that is listening that the Awolowo Foundation does print those books, and we try to keep them all in stock. And people who want to buy them can call the foundation's telephone number, and they will be directed to those who actually you can purchase them, and they will make arrangements to send them to you. So yes, we're doing that.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
We have 8 more minutes. Professor Akala from Howard University, you have been calling my phone and calling my phone. Can you please, we have 8 more minutes. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I wish you happy birthday, long life, and an enjoyable evening of life.
Thank you.
I've listened to all the discussion and I'm very much impressed. May Baba Awolowo soul rest in perfect peace. If not for him, people like me and many of us here wouldn't have gone to school. Without bothering about what is happening in other parts of the country, he established free primary education. Not only that, cocoa nurseries were established in various parts of Western region so that cocoa farmers could go there to get cocoa for planting. Also, I'm from Kuta in Iwo area. There were dams all over the place, and I think that was characteristic of all Western region, where we have good drinking water. All these things are no longer in existence now. But my major concern now is with our young youth who graduated from university and they could not find anything to do. I don't want the answer now, but if your foundation can come in, Awolowo Foundation, fine. And if you can mobilize other people from Western region, all the states that constitute Western region, to start something in form of jobs for our youth. We need that so that even if we go to federalism, we will be able to sustain ourselves. Thank you.
Well, thank you very, very much. I mean, you kind of answered the question, what can the diaspora do to develop Nigeria? You've answered that again in your comment. And I would very much like to get in touch with you and progress your suggestion. I think it's not for this forum. I think Professor Falola can put us in touch with one another, and we can move this conversation forward, because it is, I mean, youth unemployment in Nigeria is now up to 42%. I mean, that's ridiculous. So we need to do something about it, and we need to do something about the frustration of the youth, which is quite dangerous, actually. So, yes, I would love to be able to talk to you about this.
Thank you very much. 3 hours, and you lasted it. You didn't drink water. You still have a lot of energy. Our next program is on March 7, when we are going to bring Bishop Matthew Azan Kuka, the Bishop of the Sokoto Diocese. Same time, Bishop Kuka, and in April, we are going to interview the big guru in literature, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who has been nominated for the Nobel Prize many, many times. Thank you all. I want to thank my team. They do excellent work. The young people, they're very, very interested in this, and they drive the project in their own ways, shaping it the way they want it to be. I thank all the members of the audience. There's no way everybody's questions can be answered. So many questions were sent ahead of time. Someone from London said, sent 2 pages of questions ahead of time. We have people on the other political spectrum, from Akintola family, from some others, they sent questions ahead of time. If I didn't read them, it's because of time, not because I want to marginalize anyone. So, and finally, I want to thank the patient ambassador, the Dutch ambassador in the Sudan. He's been here all along. I want to thank the Vice Chancellor, Professor Bilade. We're very grateful. And I want to thank Chief John Nwondo, the former president of ANASE. We thank all of you. And I thank Her Excellency for the questions and the patience. What follows? We'll download this immediately on YouTube so that you can rewatch it as many times as possible. And because it's so long, 3 hours, we'll also cut them into some segments that are easier to manage. Once again, thank you so much. We're very grateful to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Falola. You've been prolific in your write-ups and getting ready for this. It's been a lot of work. Thank you very much. And thank you to the interviewers and to everyone that has taken part. God bless you all.